Greetings brothers, today we're looking at the Redemptor Dreadnought and we're going to compare it right up against the Contemptor Dreadnought. We're going to check out everything, we're going to Mathhammer, and by the end of the video you'll know precisely which one to take to best benefit your army list. Welcome to the weekly tactics video. I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander, and every week on this channel we have tons of helpful Blood Angels content. If that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing. Today we're going to look at the Warscrolls, then we'll look at some lore, we'll do some extensive Mathhammer, we'll also look at Stratagems, Synergies, and then we'll finish with a summary. And if you need to skip ahead, then each part of the video will be marked in the timeline as appropriate. So we'll start by looking at the Contemptor Dreadnought, and I mean the main changes here in 9th edition are as it was given core and it was giving Duty Eternal. It did lose some wounds, but it still has that 3+ save and then the 5+ invulnerable save. It can obviously be equipped with a multi-melta, or it carries a pattern assault cannon, and it has the storm bolter and then the combat fist. So Relic Contemptor is 10 points cheaper here, equipped with 2 heavy plasma cannons. However, it does require you to take that Martial Legacy for 1 CP, and then there's a huge host of options in there. We can take various different shooting arms and the close combat arm, where you get the option of both the chain fist and the combat weapon, and then finally we can also include a cyclone missile launcher. So the Redemptor Dreadnought has a few different options, but it starts with the heavy onslaught cannon and the flamer, both of which we can swap out for a regular onslaught cannon can replace the flamer, and then the macro plasma incinerator to replace the onslaught cannon. It can also take its rocket pods, and then the main difference between the two profiles is why it doesn't have any invulnerable save, it does have 4 more wounds, so that is really the only key difference between the profile lines. So we'll see when we get to the Mathhammer section what the difference with no invulnerable save against the 4 extra wounds actually equates to on the tabletop, and these models are all pretty similar in price, the regular Contemptor coming in least, and we'll definitely dive into that a little bit later on. So the lore for the Contemptor Dreadnought. Relics of a glorious days gone, Contemptor Dreadnoughts are marvels of ancient technology. The oldest of these war engines first strode into battle during the Unification Wars, when the Emperor of Mankind rose from amidst the barbarity of the old Earth and united Terra under his rule. They fought for the Imperium during the Great Crusade, the Horus Heresy, and the vengeful years of the Scouring. They have shed the blood of countless foes and have seen the golden glory of the Imperium fade and darken into shadow over millennia of battle. Still they fight on, and they can be roused from their timeless slumber at such times that enemies of the Imperium tremble in fear. And then for the Redemptor. Along with the Primaris Space Marines, Archmagos Call fashioned many mighty weapons of war to fight beside them. The Redemptor Dreadnought is one such engine of destruction, fashioned to accommodate a fallen battle brother within its armoured sarcophagus. These towering walkers are ferocious, destructive engines of war. Their armour is every bit as thick as that of a battle tank, allowing them to wade through hails of enemy fire without so much as slowing. Any warrior that has seen a Redemptor Dreadnought weather a direct hit from an artillery shell or shrug off the roaring blast of melta weapons understands just how fearsome and durable they are. Yet it is in the field of mass destruction that the Redemptor Dreadnoughts truly shine, for they are able to mount an array of potent weaponry whose like has not been seen since the glorious days of the Great Crusade. The heavy onslaught Gatling cannon is a multi-barreled solid projectile weapon that screams with fury as it spews thousands of high caliber shells into the enemy by the moment. Even the power armour of the heretic Astartes is little proof against such a gun, while infantry and light vehicles are diced to ruin by its relentless weight of fire. By comparison, the macro plasma incinerator has the range and the searing fury to annihilate enemy war machines, hulking biomonsters and demonic abominations with impunity. So now that we know about the Dreadnoughts and just how badass they are, let's go straight into their survivability. And this is where these guys shine, and if you watch my videos you'll know that I always talk about the Redemptor being a really good baseline unit in 9th edition. It's very survivable and has a lot of damage for the points cost, so a direct comparison against the 2 Contemptors here is going to be really interesting. So while I've started by colour coding the 3 units we've got today, we've got the Redemptor in orange, we're going to have the Contemptor in purple, and then we're going to have the Relic Contemptor in light pink. But however, for the survivability, the Contemptor and the Relic Contemptor share the profile, so we've just got one entry on this slide. Now, what's really interesting here is even with its 4 extra wounds, against small arms fire you would expect the Redemptor will pull ahead. However, against high EP weapon, the Contemptor will actually pull ahead. And remember, the Contemptor is going to be around 30 points cheaper. So I guess the base profile version of the Contemptor is going to be better against big high-end weaponry. And you can see that as in today's survivability, we've put down 4 extra weapons. So we normally look at the bolt rifles, flamestorms, power fists and plasmas. So we've added the eviscerators from the Sisters of the Battle Repentia, las cannons, multi-meltas and thunderhammers. So in all the calculations for damage done, I always remove the attacker's hit roll. So assume that you've been hit. So if you are hit 7 to 8 times with bolt rifles, that will kill a Redemptor Dreadnought. If you are hit 54 times with bolt rifles against a Contemptor, that will kill that. So removing the roll to hit just lets you see just how survivable these actually are when the damage comes in. I have also made a minor note about explosions just so we can keep that in mind, in that the Redemptor does have slightly nastier explosions, so just be aware of that if you are going to run one. So if we move into the Mathhammer damage now, what we've done actually is we've taken every weapon option for all 3 and we've Mathhammered it out in terms of how many times they'll hit and how much wounds they'll do against toughness 4, 7 and 8. Now we'll go through these next 3 slides pretty quickly, but you can pause it and you can see it, and then we'll actually hit these against various armour, and then we'll do a comparison of everything. So you'll have all the data, and if you want to stop on any of the slides, please do, or you can review them. Now, I just want to say this video this week took me about 6 hours to make, and it literally takes like 2 seconds for you to hit that like button. So let's just consider it a trade. I give you my 6 hours of time, you give me your 2 seconds. If you would do that for me, it would be much appreciated. So yeah, if we move on, you can now see that we've got all the Relic Contemptor weapons mapped out, and I did just highlight a few key things in each slide, and in this slide, green is the weapon that did the best, and blue is the close combat weapon. So surprisingly, those new Volkite weapons with no AP actually generally perform really well, with the ability to do mortal wounds on rolls of 6s, and just sheer weight of fire, I guess, 16 shots if you did equip 2 of them. This slide here is actually just firing 1. So with the Redemptor Dreadnought, quite often we see them with the heavy onslaught cannon or the macro plasma. Obviously that is the 2 main options, but I've been really leaning towards the macro plasma, and when we finally Mathhammer it out here, we can really see why. In most situations, the macro plasma will do more damage, and remember, it is that D6 shots, so potentially in this example we'll work out the average of D6, which is 3.5 shots, but you can command reroll the number of shots to essentially have a chance at doing even more. So now we get to the normal table that you guys will be familiar with from this channel, where we look at infantry, characters, monsters and armour, and we shoot all the weapons against them. And I guess if we look at the Contemptor first, which is the 150 point model, then generally the multi-melta is going to be quite strong. We know multi-meltas are obviously very strong in 9th edition because of the additional shot, and also he's actually kind of a beast in melee for 150 points. So just if we want to pick a Contemptor to maybe just think about being sort of like melee focused, trying to get across the battlefield, that might be really interesting for the points cost. So for the Relic Contemptor, there's obviously a host of weapon options, and I've gone through all of them. There's a couple that actually, if you want to see, like the Multi-Melta or the Kerr's Assault Cannon, are back 2 slides on the Contemptor because it can take these as well. However, what's really interesting, at just 5 points more, are those Volkite cannons. I guess no one's going to own them, so you're going to need to go out and buy a couple of Volkite cannons, but twin auto cannons at 10 points more, or the twin las cannons at 20 more points per arm, barely perform better, and if in some cases it looks like the Volkite cannons can actually outperform. So that's sort of my standout takeaway from this, and yeah, I mean, I have a Contemptor that I haven't run much in 9th because obviously they lost some wounds and they lost some ballistic skill and save, and they feel no pain, the Relic Contemptors, but actually when we do all the Mathhammer here, it seems like they can actually be a very competitive option, and they can also be very competitive priced wise. It's worth also mentioning that the Relic Contemptor can take that Chain Fist, which absolutely destroys vehicles. It will do the most damage, hands down, of all the 3 Dreadnoughts, but the Redemptor will come in very close because it does have that D3+3 claw. And if we move straight on to the Redemptor next, then for a while, I guess, lots of people have worked out or wondered how they should actually arm the Redemptor. Well, I think this slide is going to make it very clear in that the Macroplasma is probably your best option. And again, it's worth spending those 5 points for the Onslaught Cannon. The Onslaught Cannon will generally do more damage than the Flamer, and obviously it's got twice the range. And the Rocket Pods are kind of like just an added bonus that you can consider taking. So now in this final slide, I've tried to pick the options that seem to be best from the previous slides. So for the Redemptor, that's the Macroplasma, the Onslaught, the Rocket Pods, the Stormbolters and the Fist. For the Contemptor, it's the Multi-Melta, the Combi Bolter, the Fist. And then for the Relic Contemptor, we did the Volkite with the Cyclone Missile Launcher, with the Chain Fist and a Stormbolter. And then finally, we also tried in green, a new option that we haven't seen before. Now, while the Contemptor doesn't do bad in terms of melee, like I said, it could be very interesting to use him in melee. Just having that single Multi-Melta and the Stormbolter is never going to do that much damage. The Redemptor comes in here, yellow for second, so it comes in second in a lot of categories. Obviously, the full-on Relic Contemptor with the 2 Volkites and the Cyclone Missile Launcher in green is going to be your strongest, but for the most part, the Redemptor is going to be very close. Bear in mind it doesn't have to sacrifice its close combat ability. However, if you want a shooting Relic Contemptor, then that is still an option. I think some people like to run them with Twiz las cannons. If you wanted to do that, you could work it out yourself, but I did say that the Volkites seem to be cheaper and better as they stand. With the twin las cannons, you would be coming in at 205 points. Assuming, of course, you have the Cyclone Missile Launcher on as there as well. However, the Relic Contemptor in the light pink, with the Cyclone, with the Volkite, with the Chain Fist and the Stormbolter, generally seems pretty good. I mean, it matches the Relic Contemptor in close combat. We talked about how it's pretty much just as survivable, and for shooting, it does not bad with additional ability to pump out some of those mortal wounds. It probably actually maybe does better against like a lot of 2 damage infantry because its guns would be optimized to kill 2 damage infantry, in that it'd be doing 2 damage a turn and then the mortal wounds would kick in at the end. So then my question is there any ways to buff these with stratagems? And of course there is. We have the ability to smoke screen for 1 CP, -1 to hit. We have the ability to do Armour of Contempt, ignore mortal wounds on a 5+ for a single phase. We have Wisdom of the Ancient, which can give us the aura, basically the Captain or Lieutenant's aura, Rites of Battle or Tactical Precision, to give us a buff around our Dreadnought. And then Adaptive Strategy actually works quite well on Dreadnoughts for 2, it's quite expensive at 2 CP, but it activates all your doctrines. So if you're a Dreadnought with like heavy weapons, assault weapons, close combat weapons, the ability to have all of them in their specific doctrine for a turn could be pretty useful. So I want to talk a little bit about synergies, how these guys would work in a Blood Angels list, and the way I see them is they're very much a mobile fire base to begin with the threat that if you do have that close combat weapon on them, that if they get into close combat they can deal out a lot of damage. Now, if we talk about a lot of people are running Eradicators, well, Eradicators could stay close to get the reroll 1s from the Wisdom of the Ancient buff. Alternatively, Plasma Inceptors could drop down next to them, again, to get that reroll of 1s to hit. And they also benefit from any auras because they are core themselves, and they also can be buffed with a Tech Marine to get that 2+ ballistic skill. So comboed with maybe a Tech Marine in your list, you could definitely bump up this their shooting a little bit as well, and they can be given like Chapter Master rerolls in early turns. If you had like a captain on a bike that was going to fly up the battlefield in turn 1, you could give the Relic Contemptor, you know, his aura to make it basically reroll all misses and be a bit more powerful or potent for those early turns. And then, because these are fielded with strength 14 melee weapons, then pretty much we're going to be wounding anything on the game on 2s due to the red thirst rule. So if they're charged, or if they do charge, you're pretty much going to be guaranteed wounding on 2s, and the different weapons have the ability to deal up to 6 damage per hit in melee combat, so they're generally pretty scary in melee, even probably more so scary in melee than they are in shooting. And that's why I like them, because I feel like Blood Angels need a little bit of shooting, so they fill that role, but then when they get in melee, they can really just crush through pretty much any target they end up engaged against. I've seen some very competitive lists that are running 2 Redemptors. I actually benched my Contemptor, as I mentioned earlier in the video, but based on all this Mathhammer, I think I could definitely bring that Contemptor back. Multi-Melta and a Claw would be an option for a regular one, or feel like a bit more firepower, definitely get the Cyclone Missile Launcher on, and I think I need to buy at least 1 Volkite Cannon. I always like to have a Claw on my Blood Angels Dreadnoughts. I just think it makes a lot of sense. And it gives you that option to really get into close combat and do damage if the enemy are going to ignore your target, right? I often find my Dreadnoughts in the middle of the board, helping out like a group of Blade Guards or something to basically shore up that centre of the board and score those Oath of Moment points every turn. So I think with the addition of adding Duty Eternal to all Dreadnoughts in 9th edition, and the fact that the ones from the Space Marine Codex are core, or all of these guys are core, it really elevates them above any other armour, based on the fact that they won't be core and they possibly won't have Duty Eternal and an invulnerable save. So yeah, it's just, they are just generally probably the most survivable armour point for point. Now, the Volkite Cavern obviously performed very well. It is a new weapon and it is just 5 points. Might not be most effective against like enemies with maybe 2+ or really great saves, but on average it's going to perform pretty good. I mean, the las cannon for 25 points per arm, or the twin las cannon for 25 points per arm, seems a little bit overcosted. So I think a Relic Contemptor armed with like a couple of Volkites and a Cyclone Missile Launcher is probably going to be our best bet if you want that sort of fire support Relic Contemptor, which was very common in 8th edition, but maybe not so much 9th edition. The Redemptor Dreadnought was very close behind that, and it does also have the Fist, and what it does have less range, right? Because the Cavern and the Cyclone Missile Launcher are 45 inches and 36, whereas the Redemptor has like the Salt Cannon and the Rocket Pods, which are only 24. But I think these Dreadnoughts are generally moving forward. I mean, unless you're going to use it to hold a backfield objective, and then even then, if you were going to hold the backfield objective with a very shooting Dreadnought, it would be vulnerable to any sort of deep strike charging force, so that might not even work out for you anyway. So yeah, I really recommend a Claw, and there's definitely a few options here, and I think I will actually start fielding my Contemptor again. Maybe a little more, maybe just the base profile one, but I do think it's actually more competitive than I thought it was going into this video. So yeah, if you have any elite slots left over in your army and you have some room, then I think, and you have some points, you know, I think one of these could definitely work out really well. I actually personally really like the idea of 2 of them. I don't know if I have enough points to get 2 Dreadnoughts in my list, but a single Dread as a mobile fire support, especially if you're considering something like Eradicators and all your other HQ units are moving away up the battlefield, you want something to give those Eradicators the rerolls, because we know point for point right now Eradicators are some of the strongest units in the game. Then I think that the Dreadnought idea is very well thought out. And yeah, I know that we could potentially look at some more Forge World Dreadnoughts, and there is a bunch of them, and I will do that in a future video, and we'll compare some more shooting based Dreadnoughts from the Forge World, including the Leviathan, because we haven't looked at the Leviathan for a little while, so we'll get back to that in the near future. But hopefully this gives you a good picture of both the Contemptor and the Redemptor, and thank you very much for tuning in today. So just before you go, I want to tell you that if you do want to support the channel in any way, there are some links in the video description below. You can also now join the channel here on YouTube and become a channel member. And then finally, just in next Friday's tactic video, assuming everything has arrived, we're going to be doing a giveaway of the new multi-part Blade Guard Veteran kit, the new multi-part Eradicator kit, and the new Storm Speeder that we did the tactics video for last week. I'll put the video for that up here. So make sure you check in on next Friday's video, because hopefully, assuming everything's arrived, then you'll have details on how you can go ahead and enter a giveaway to win one of those kits. And wherever you are in the world, we'll get it posted out to you. It's just sort of a thank you for everybody who's become a subscriber, and this was really made possible by one of my subscribers here on YouTube, Echo Mirage, so big thank you out to him. So in Scotland, where I live, we've just been told that we're in lockdown for 3 more weeks, so unfortunately our live show on a Monday night will not be back for a little while, so in the interim I'll try and make sure that there's a bunch of content out so you can hang out, check out the channel, and I hope I will see you all soon. By the blood are we made, brothers. Peace.